Hello, welcome to Becoming Unstoppable Fitness and Weight Loss. We're your hosts, Lynn and Stephanie. We're just two ordinary girls born without skinny jeans. We fought hard to become fit and fierce, and now we're coaches who get to share our passion for health and strength with others.
We started this podcast so we could share the knowledge and insights that have helped many clients with an even larger audience. Our dream is to help you become unstoppable.
Okay, today is episode 22, and I am so excited to announce we have a special guest in the house. Today we are speaking with Mitchell Rogers. He is a doctor of chiropractics. He actually works out at F45. He works out with Stephanie and myself, and I met him the other day. He gave us some great tips on form and posture and recovery, all kinds of great tips, and I asked him to be on the podcast so he could share some of his expertise with you all. So welcome.
Glad to be here. I'd love to share any information and get it out there to the masses and help them in their own fitness and weight loss journeys.
Yeah, so appreciate you joining us today. So I have a couple of questions for you. I have never personally been to a chiropractor. I hear that you are also, you prescribe physical therapy as well. So you work in a couple of different areas.
Yes, so I didn't think that it made sense to only, yes, the chiropractic adjustment is a very powerful thing and it helps a lot with a lot of problems and aids in helping your body do its own natural healing process. But you can do more. There's more things that you can do that can shorten healing time and get you back onto the field, into the gym, whatever it may be, get you back there faster by doing the exercises and doing the physical therapy. That can also keep you from falling back into that old injury habit and falling further and further into not being active and getting further from your goals.
Okay, awesome. So you have a little bit from two fields that you can share with us.
Mm-hmm.
So when I looked up chiropractors, I saw a lot of information about energy and blood flow. And so I think from what I read, correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of the alignment that you do, a lot of when you examine our bodies, you check for alignment, and a lot of that has to do with making sure that we do get proper blood flow and energy flow. Is that correct?
That is correct. So when we're doing our initial assessment, we kind of diving into, okay, what's normal, and then where is abnormal motion happening throughout the spine. So our spine should move as one fluid unit, and pushing, like if you've ever been on my table, Stephanie has, but I will push and be kind of pushing in and feeling whether your spine is springy or if it feels like I'm hitting a brick wall or pushing in on this table. And so feeling where that spine is moving versus not moving, and then going into those areas where the spine is not moving, and so all of your nerves come out and exit through the spine. And so if you put a kink in a hose and you had something pushing down, the water doesn't flow through it as well, right? Mm-hmm. Same thing happens with our nerves. And so if you ever had, sometimes you'll see us do things like muscle testing before an adjustment. And so you'll test a specific muscle, one side will be weaker than the other side. You'll go to the segment where, in your spine, where that nerve that innervates that muscle goes to. If you adjust that segment and then retest that muscle, it's going to be stronger because there's the full energy, the full capability of that nerve is firing to that muscle to then recruit more muscle fibers, and then you'll be stronger.
Okay.
So that's kind of on the energy flow side. The blood flow side of things, especially in the cervical spine, a lot of people will, after their first adjustment or any adjustment really, will sometimes their facial get really flush and they'll feel really hot. And it's because, same thing, we have a thing called the vertebral artery that goes through, so it enters into your neck actually at your 6th cervical vertebra, and then it exits at C2 and then goes all the way up into your skull, and it actually is what brings the blood to your brain. And so if any of the vertebrae in your neck are twisted or kinking that hose, that's actually a hose, it can cause less blood flow to the brain, fogginess, things like that. And that's why with the adjustment, you'll get that sudden rush, and it's a very quick feeling of a lot of blood flow finally getting restored back to the brain, and you'll get the flushing, and some people sweat and different things like that.
That's fascinating. And so during an adjustment, how are you getting that kink out of the hose? Like, what, you just pop it back into place?
So that one, it's kind of hard to, I should have brought my spine with me. But there's a tiny little, so everything's kind of like a little disc with different holes going through it. So one for the spinal cord, then it's coming out the sides for the nerves that actually go into your arms and legs. But then there's also one more hole in the cervical spine specifically for that. So it's like a hose running up through there. So if all of those vertebrae, or if anyone is twisted or turned or shifted in any way, it can cause that hose to kink between the two of them. And then so relying or putting that back into alignment, or whatever you would like to call it, causes that kink to go away, restoring the proper blood flow.
Wow, so fascinating. I might have to take a visit to the
All right.
chiropractor. You specifically. So just out of curiosity, how did you become interested in chiropractics?
So kind of a funny story. My dad was a chiropractor, actually. I never thought about being a chiropractor until I was a senior in high school.
Okay.
I always knew I played baseball, and that was all I wanted to do. I was like, all right, I'm going to go to play college, and then I'll figure it out. And I was in my senior year of high school in an anatomy class. I was really good at it. That was what I clearly needed to do something with my life in the anatomy field. And my teacher saw it and was like, all right, what do you want to do? Like, I know you want to play baseball, but that's probably not going to work out. Like, what's the backup plan?
Yeah.
Like, be smart about this. And I was like, I don't know, like, want to do something like personal training or anything like in that realm. And then one day, I don't know how it got brought up, but she was like, found out my dad was a chiropractor, and was like, you ever thought about being a chiropractor? That's a great idea, actually. And so basically from that day on, I started thinking about it, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to set my life up to where baseball doesn't work. Like, I'm going to be a chiropractor. And then that started, once I kind of wrapped my brain that was my reality, it was like, okay, life kind of changes now. And it's a great change, though. It was definitely a fun change, and one that I'm excited to work on the rest of my life. That's for sure.
Good for you. So how much schooling did you have to go through to
So,
become a chiropractor?
4 years of undergrad, graduated, then went to Park University, where takes about 3.5 years. It's 10 trimesters, and then you get out. So about 7.5 years total.
Okay. And so is your dad still practicing in Kansas City?
No, my dad passed away when I was a senior in college, actually.
Oh,
So
sorry.
right before I got to chiropractic school, I didn't get to pick his brain about everything, unfortunately.
Wow.
But
He'd be so proud.
thank you.
That's so cool. You're carrying on the legacy. Yeah, I'm very sorry about your dad, but what an honor to him.
Exactly, and it makes it even cooler. Kind of walk into the office every day, and
Yeah.
I have those conversations where it's like, oh yeah, hey, thanks for that. And like some quick thought will come into my brain, and it's always cool.
Love it. Very, very inspiring story. Thank you. So we want to know how this, like, what causes the poor flow. If we're foggy, or if I'm guessing some people have numbness and tingling and all kinds of things can result from poor energy and blood flow, right?
Yes, so definitely the numbness and tingling, that's kind of what we call our bread and butter in the chiropractic realm, is spinal issues, and then what it's called radiculopathy. So pain that starts going down arms or legs, and that's burning, shooting, and tingling feeling, kind of like your arms asleep sometimes.
Yeah.
That all kind of stems back to what we were talking about earlier, to that hose or that nerve being kinked wherever it's exiting the spine. But that can cause muscle weakness, the pain, all of those types of things, and that's where we are better than anybody else truly at figuring those things out and helping with that. Physical therapy is awesome once we get that pain to centralize, and physical therapy can help that pain centralize. So instead of going down the arms, centralizing back towards just the pain in the spine area. But getting it back to that point, typically chiropractic, I feel like, works a little bit faster. And then once we get you back to that point of the pain not going down the arms, not traveling, going into the physical therapy route, to strengthen all of the small little muscles around your spine to hopefully keep everything from shifting and falling back into those patterns is what we like to call them. So.
Okay, so now this is a fascinating tip. How do we strengthen the muscles around the vertebrae?
So loading the spine with weights and things like that is scientifically proven to be one of the best things that you can do for overall spinal health.
So just
and
when we
longevity.
do any kind of upper body,
Lower body, anything that is putting extra weight. So all day long we have the weight of gravity coming down on our spine. And that's why we have our discs, and there's curves in our spine to help dissipate that load.
okay.
And so if you are constantly challenging yourself, like our body, it's called Wolf's Law. Our body responds to the stresses that we put it under. So just like lifting weights, you lift a little more heavier weight, you're sore the next day, but then you give yourself 2-3 days, your muscle comes back and it builds itself back up stronger to handle that load. Everything in our body goes under that same principle, whether it's ligaments, tendons, anything you want to say, all does the same thing. So why wouldn't you do that for your spine?
Yeah.
But in cases your entire nervous system is incredibly important.
Yeah, but you're saying any weightlifting we do is
So
good for the
as
spine.
long as you are keeping it what we call a neutral spine. So we don't want to go too far into flexion, too far into extension. A little bit of flexion, a little bit of extension is okay, but you just don't want to be in the extremes of those motions while also simultaneously loading the spine.
So is a deadlift okay?
As long as you keep a neutral spine, yes.
Okay. And what does that mean, neutral spine?
So, like, there's different segments throughout there's the cervical, thoracic, and lumbar segments throughout your spine. And so in like a deadlift, the big thing you're worried about is your lower back. And so keeping that lumbar spine locked down, and so from the bottom position where you grab the bar to standing up, your lumbar spine shouldn't really move. All of the motion should happen through your hips.
Okay.
And then the thoracic spine, actually, you can't really herniate a disc in the thoracic spine.
Yeah.
The discs are very, very small. So rounding in that area of the spine is okay, as long as you can keep your spinal integrity intact in the lower segments.
But mostly you want to tuck that pelvis under, right? To
Mhm.
protect that lower spine.
Yep.
That's how I think of it. And then on your shoulders, I know Steph's always coming around the gym, pulling the shoulders back. So
Yep.
that protects the thoracic.
Yes. Yep. Engaging all of those muscles in the posterior chain and creating a lot of intra-abdominal pressure
Yes.
is what keeps you safe, especially that intra-abdominal pressure and pushing out into
Intra-abdominal.
yes. So in your abdomen, where all of your organs and everything are, your diaphragm sits on top of them, and so you have all of your abs around the outside, and what they're really there for is to give you something stable to push against. So when they say like breathing and bracing, talking about like pushing your diaphragm down
Oh.
to literally create more pressure, just like a science experiment, more pressure in your abdominal cavity, which is what's going to keep your spine stiff.
No one's ever taught me this before. Breathing and bracing.
Mm-hmm.
I love it.
I start there with
it.
most patients, more than you would think. We start on the ground, learning how to breathe and doing it the correct way of learning how to figure out, oh, I'm supposed to not just push my belly straight out, but actually create 360-degree pressure in all directions, and doing those types of things, and how breath shouldn't come from the chest, but it should start in the belly.
I will say, I've been going to Mitchell and he's helped me immensely and I learned so much. So when it comes to like bracing the spine and everything, I feel like I learned so much more as a trainer to be able to coach clients on using the abdominals, using everything to keep that neutral spine. But as a trainer, you can't fix all your problems for a client. So having a great chiropractor to refer them to get more in depth, especially when it comes to injuries, is huge. So how can you help people with those things?
So the chiropractic adjustment is very powerful in especially returning energy flow of nerves. People always think of chiropractors as bone doctors. In school, we refer to ourselves as nerve doctors. Not necessarily neurologists, but is what we are pushing on the bones to create space for the nerves. So it's kind of a little bit of both. And so the adjustment, so like if you had two vertebrae sitting on top of each other like this, and one is twisted or gone like this, and there's a nerve that exits between the two of them right here, and it comes down and it's kind of pushing on that nerve, well, that means the segments, so probably above and below that, so for 4 vertebrae in there, your spine's really not moving a whole lot. And so you can come in and you feel that, and that's what we're doing and what we're assessing in our initial, like when you face down and we're pushing you and people are like, why are you touching me? That's what we're doing and what we're feeling for. And so then finding which specific segments we need to go in and move and what direction they're rotated. How is it a rotation? Is it a lateral flexion? How is that? Is it anterior? Is it posterior? Like going in and finding out those things and then applying the correct adjustment to not make it worse. Because if the vertebrae turn to the right and then I say, oh, I just adjust that segment and I push it further to the right, that's just going to make you hurt more.
Yeah.
You're not going to hear the nice pops and clicks. It's just going to be painful and it doesn't feel good for anybody. And it can actually make the energy flow worse. So going in there and making sure you're taking your time and figuring out exactly what needs to move and how it needs to move is important to restoring that flow. And you can check before and after. A lot of times we'll do those muscle tests where it's like, all right, do a bicep curl, I'm pushing down, okay, I can overpower you really easily. And then you adjust that segment, do it again, and now I can't push you down. That muscle is strong and everything is kind of restored.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I will say, for anyone out there listening that maybe hasn't been to a chiropractor and doesn't know what to expect, one of the great things about Dr. Rogers is that not only is he a chiropractor, he understands the need of prescribing that physical therapy and why it's there, because you can go to a chiropractor and get those adjustments and it can help that blood flow and you feel better, you feel the pain relieved. I went to chiropractors for years and it was like twice a week and it would help and relieve pain temporarily, but I wasn't doing any of the work following that up because I didn't know any better at that point. I did my regular fitness routine, but I didn't have any rehab exercises that would help keep that alignment in place. And so going to Dr. Rogers or someone that has the same philosophy as him, where you get that follow-up of the physical therapy aspect, that's going to make it more well-rounded and like a long-term solution versus like sometimes the adjustment is more of a short-term solution. I feel like, do you have anything to speak on further on that?
I completely agree with that. The adjustment is a very short-term solution, and you have to get the results for a permanent problem. Everyone's dealing with, if you don't address it, it doesn't go away. You might not feel it for a few moments, but back to Wolf's Law, we adapt to the changes in our life. If we're constantly in pain and my shoulders hurt every day for a year, well, that's not changing. There's no change. So now that we just become used to it. And so when people say like, oh, I just got used to it, they actually did. If you ignore a problem long enough, it kind of goes away. It doesn't actually go away from a sense of if you ignore it long enough, oh, then
it heals itself.
Now you're 40 and that shoulder just really doesn't even work at all.
Yeah.
Or things like that, and how not addressing that problem will give you a lot more issues later in life. I learned that one the hard way a little bit. Just kind of ignoring things for a long time until, now instead of doing a 2-week, take it off and do a quick rehab, I'm going to fix this problem over 3 months and have to be thinking about it for a long time. And it's better to just address the problem from the start than have to play catch up.
Okay, so I'm going to ask probably not a smart question, but we'll see. Okay, so if you're bringing a spine back into alignment, right, and you're allowing the nerves to function properly and allowing blood flow to be restored, so what is the need for physical therapy? Like, why does it go back out of alignment? Or is that what Stephanie was referring to?
Everyone, we call it patterns. So if, say, your right hip is shifted, that causes a slight curve on to the left in your lumbar spine, which then creates another compensatory curve back to the right in your mid-back, which then creates another one. So people pattern. Like a lot of the time, someone lays on my table, if I see him 5 times, every 5 times, I will adjust pretty much the same segment. When you start to really notice that you're making big changes, patterns change.
Gotcha.
When they lay down and you go, oh, that's different. I'm not feeling what I was once feeling. That's a really good sign in terms of healing, the healing process. But why it goes back into that is so the muscles are pulling on those bones.
So it has something to do with muscle imbalance in the first place.
Yes, exactly.
So we're always trying to create balance.
Yep. So doing unilateral exercises so you're not overpowering one side versus the other. Like instead of always doing a two-handed press, doing a one-arm press. And so you can't create those muscular imbalances. And so doing things like that help a lot.
So that is the root of problems, the muscular imbalances.
Yes, a lot of the time it is.
Okay. Awesome. So overall, how would you say that this helps to improve our health? I mean, we talked about how it improves our function, and we talked about how it improves blood flow to the brain, which I'm guessing, you know, if you have increased blood flow to your brain, that's going to help your mental capacity. That's exciting.
Yeah, brain runs on glucose, and you're being able to deliver more of what it needs. So it helps with mental clarity and also adjustments, especially through the upper cervical part of the neck. So the spinal cord itself goes through your entire spine, obviously. But up especially towards the top of the spine, you can actually get small, what we call kink, or just for using the same terms here, of the spinal cord itself. So going down both arms, both legs, things like that. But it also works with the brain in terms of like the autonomic nervous system.
Yes.
And so in terms of aiding with digestion and being able to sleep and do things like that, most people report, especially after their first adjustment ever, or if they've gone a long time and really needed one, or go through a long section of time where they're really in that sympathetic tone or fight or flight kind of tone, that after an adjustment, they report sleeping. It's one of the best night's sleep they've ever had.
Yeah.
And it's because if your body is caught into that sympathetic tone, and then you can relax that sympathetic tone and have everything calm down, especially by adjusting the thoracic spine, which is where that really comes into play. Doing that will help people relax. It helps the function of internal organs as well, because so all of those, the nervous system that takes care of the autonomic nervous system that takes care of all of your internal organs and everything comes through the thoracic spine. And so a lot of things they don't technically go away, but they get better, and people Western medicine doesn't love the fact that we talk about these things.
Right. Because they just like to treat the symptoms.
Exactly.
Take a sleeping pill,
saying, okay, we aren't doing anything to the internal organs.
Yeah.
But if the nervous system then plays with those internal organs, if it works, it works. And I've seen it work.
Absolutely.
And that was where, because I came into chiropractic school with a little bit of a hesitancy, just because I've heard what people say about us and what people think about us and everything like that. And so going into it, I was like, all right, I'm not getting into all of the voodoo and things like that, or whatever you want to call it. But then once I'm there, I'm seeing it work, and it's like, okay, what they're saying is real. It's right. It happens.
Yeah.
I've seen it with my own two eyes, and
part of it,
call it a placebo. If you think it's going to work, it'll work. Your brain is the most powerful thing in your body, and it controls everything. If your brain thinks it'll work, it probably will work.
Yeah, for sure. Funny story. I did go to a chiropractor once. My girlfriend said, oh, it's a quack. It was like after I had my third child, and she said, here, call my quack. I was having all kinds of like weird body issues that nobody could figure out. And he did some muscle testing on me, and he said, oh, you have a tooth issue. And I was like, I don't have a tooth problem. And he's like, you have a tooth issue. And I was like, okay, quack. And then like, I don't know, 3 years later, my dentist is like, I had to get my whole tooth taken out. Like I had a tooth issue. And I was like, oh my gosh, the chiropractor / quack was right.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if I just was connecting the dots, but I believed that he knew what he was talking about. So I should have listened.
You probably did.
Mhm.
But if you have no pain, it's one of those things where if you don't have faith in it, you've never seen it work before,
Mhm.
why would you?
Yeah.
So I understand it, but sometimes people do know what they're talking
Yeah.
about.
Well, and I think you have to get a relationship going with your doctor, so
It's
you
the most
do
important
build
part.
this trust and this rapport, and then you do start believing, start going against it.
I've had so many patients come in and sit on the table and be like very skeptical of everything that I'm doing. And they don't stop being skeptical until one thing works. And they go, oh, I can actually do this again?
Yes.
I'm not in pain all the time?
Yes.
And then they go, okay, maybe you're right. And they'll start asking me questions about a whole different thing. Like they came in with one specific issue and then it's like, all right, you knew how to fix this.
Mhm.
All right, hold on, I got this, this, and this. What else can you help me with?
Yeah.
And so you build that relationship with them and then you become very close just because you're talking about all aspects of health, from mental health to what you're eating, your exercise routine, your pains,
Yeah.
all of those things, like intestinal health as well. Like
Yes.
it all is important, it all plays a role. And we're trying to treat the body as a whole unit and not just one set of symptoms.
Yes. And I love the fact that you're a nerve doctor, because the longer I live, the more I figure out, like, oh my gosh, this is all based on our central nervous system. And I don't know that much about it, but we're about to dig in and learn more about it in some of the upcoming episodes. So thank you so much for the information that you shared. And for you at home, if you have any additional questions, please feel free to email Mitchell. We will put his address in the show notes, and you can always contact myself and Stephanie. Our information will be in the show notes as well. And please tune in next time for some more Becoming Unstoppable Fitness and Weight Loss.